Hello everyone, I'm Terry O'Neill. I'm the Director of the Community Development Department for the City of Hampton, and we are here today to give you an introduction to our community plan kickoff process for the 2040 Hampton Community Plan. So before I get started, I'd like for you just to take a little bit of time and look at these slides and think about what they mean. I'm not going to ask anybody to talk. I'm not going to comment on them, and just take a look and contemplate what these three slides coming up mean to you. So my reason for showing you those slides is really to try to impress upon you and to get everybody here and in the community in the mindset of thinking about what the future of our community may be. As you can see from those slides, it took a lot of courage for people who made those statements to sort of project out what a future state of being might be. Many people don't believe those things are achievable, but as you can see from those three examples, and I could give you many more, if we dream about something, it's often we can achieve it. So that's what we're going to ask you to do as we go through this process to help us envision what the future of our community should be. So why do we do this? There are really two main reasons. One is that it's legally mandated by state law, but really the most important reason is because things change. Think about your own personal situation. The last time we undertook this process with the community was in 2006. So think about all the things in your life or your family that have changed since 2006. So just like that, our community has undergone a number of changes in the last 12 plus years or so. So it's time now for us to take a step back, assess where we are, what are the trends that are affecting our community, and to project that forward as to what we think we can be. The last time, as I mentioned, we did this process at this scale was back in 2006. In 2011, we did a smaller scale review and update. So here we are today in 2018. As I mentioned, the main reason is because we need to reflect on the changes that have happened in our community. Things that affect our lives, things that affect generations of people, things that affect our preferences in terms of how we shop, how we want to be entertained, and how we travel. All of those things go into the context of updating our community plan. So a little bit about the process. So here we are in October of 2018. We're kicking off this process. Over the course of the next several months, through the winter months, we will be reaching out into the community, providing a number of different opportunities for our citizens, our business community, our not-for-profits, and other stakeholders in the community to provide input and feedback to us. So this is, for us, this is primarily a listening and learning and doing research kind of phase of the process. Once we've done all of that, we'll come back at some time in the spring and kind of share all the information we've gathered from those various types of input. From there, we'll then move on to processing what we've heard and work with the community through focus groups and other avenues to develop some preliminary recommendations that we'll then present back to the community in sort of general time frame of the summer, and then go forward from there with adoption of the first part of this component, which would be the strategic plan part, in the fall of 2019. Then we'll begin on the rest of the comprehensive plan elements. Those are elements like our community facilities, our environmental element, our land use, transportation, those kinds of things, which will then culminate in the final adoption, we hope sometime in the winter of 2020. So as you can see, it's a very long process. Part of what we do in this process is to look at data, although that's not the only thing we look at. And so just to give you a quick example, we looked at how the population of Hampton divided up into the various generations, how that compares to the U.S. average. And just as you can see, across most of the board on the chart, we are fairly consistent with the national average, except that we have much more millennials. That generation of our population is much more prominent in our population cross-section than it is around the country. So we use these kind of statistics to give us a snapshot and to help us inform our process and going forward. One of the biggest issues or questions that we get oftentimes in these processes, well, we do plans all the time, you do really good plans, but I never see anything happen. Well, I'm going to use a couple of examples to show you that things really do come out of these plans. Oftentimes, though, the general public doesn't connect the dots and really relate that to something that they may have participated in or talked about many, many years ago, that it finally comes to fruition many years later, because it can be a very long process. But here's one example, Peninsula Town Center. Many of you know or went to Coliseum Mall. That property began to really decay. So we initiated a planning process, which ultimately led to a plan and then the eventual construction of Peninsula Town Center. So that was a direct result of a planning process. In addition, the redevelopment in Buckrow along the bayfront, for those longtime Hampton citizens, you'll know that there used to be an amusement park there. There used to be an old hotel. So there was development right down on the bayfront. We began this process back in the 1980s and envisioned a waterfront park with a surrounding neighborhood of new homes to help revitalize the area. And as you can see on the far right, those homes and the waterfront park in the background have come to fruition. Maybe more recently is the case of the old National Armory building on King Street. For many, many years, that was a prominent venue for not only our military reserves, but also for social events in our community. But for a long, long time, it went empty. And so just recently, it has come back to life as a microbrewery, restaurant, and entertainment venue. And in our planning processes in the early 2000s, that's what the community identified as the preferred reuse of that building. And now it is there for all to come visit. We also look at things like schools in our long-range plans, schools and parks. So the reuse of the former Hampton General Hospital on Victoria Boulevard. We went through a planning process with our community who identified the primary desired use would be for a new school for the Wythe neighborhood. And as you know, the Hunter B. Andrews School is now up and operational at that site. We spend a lot of time in our plan talking about parks and recreation facilities and quality of life. Here you see some slides of the early plans for Water Walk at Central Park along New Market Creek. Parts of that plan are now in place, and hopefully people have been able to go out and start enjoying those sections. Sandy Bottom Nature Park was also a borrow pit for the Virginia Department of Transportation many, many years ago. When they declared that surplus, it became a big interest for developers who looked at that site and envisioned new residential development. The city and a local group of interested citizens got involved and decided that through our planning process that the highest and best use for our community for that site was a large park and nature center that would serve our citizens for decades to come. And so that's how that particular amenity that's now very valued in our community came to reality. The Hampton Roads Convention Center sits on the site of a former public housing project. So as the public housing project was being discussed as being renovated or moved, we engaged in a planning process that ultimately led to the recommendation that this be a major new center of development in our community, including our brand new, relatively new Hampton Roads Convention Center, as well as residential and potentially down the road some retail and entertainment uses. And the Air and Space Center sits in a prominent site in downtown that was once a new car dealership. This is a very prominent structure that's one of the symbols of downtown. And again, this is the result of a group of citizens and businesses and local government getting together to envision what they wanted the downtown to look like, and in particular what kinds of uses they wanted along our waterfront. So that just gives you a couple of examples of how we translate these discussions that we're going to have through the next several months with our community, that ultimately they end up being many things that turn into reality for our community. As a starting point of the discussion, our City Council back in 2016 identified several sort of strategic priorities. I won't spend a lot of time, they're on the screen, but these are broad areas like economic growth, placemaking, living with water, developing an educated and engaged citizenry, a safe and clean community, family resilience and economic empowerment, and good government. Each of these will be a starting point for our discussion and dialogue with our community as we go through that listening, learning, and research phase of this process. So that gives you a quick overview of what lays ahead for us. I encourage you to contact us if you are interested in participating. We need your input. We value your input. If you have questions, the contact information is on the screen. You can call our office at 757-727-6140. And Mike Hayes, who is the Planning and Zoning Division Manager, is the lead point of contact, and his email is up there if you need to contact him directly. So I encourage you to participate, and thank you very much.